Something that I have been thinking about lately, and a topic that's recycles over and over in my mind over the course of my career in human performance, is this idea of skill development, right? This is if you're in human performance or you're developing skills in a sport. Like for me, I'm interested in jujitsu, and I learned the Olympic lifts before and various movements when I was into CrossFit. And skill seems to be, for the most part, people think of it as the expression of some technical component. But over time, my thought about what skill means has changed to the ability to solve problems in an environment. And the more skilled you are, the more effectively you can solve problems across the most contexts and environments. And this is not a big mystery in things like the application of motor skills in sports performance. This is an ongoing discussion forever. A place where I think this kind of thinking is more novel is in terms of health and performance longevity, right? When we look at the larger schema of things, like how do we preserve our health over time, we tend to think of it as health being this stable state where we're not sick. And I think that's a very limiting perspective. And instead, I would offer that health, or again, performance longevity is the term that I prefer, is a set of skills that help you solve the problem of performing your best for as long as possible. And so those skills would involve some stable components that might shift depending on the context we're in. And so a more specific example is something like sleep. And this is something I talked a lot about in the classes that I taught this week, is this idea of skilled sleep. And the first question is like, why do we have to be skilled at something that's supposed to be natural? And first of all, that's because we don't live in a natural environment. We are not totally in harmony with the rhythms of the biological environment that we're inhabiting. We have all kinds of technology that force us to break from those normal patterns to some degree. And so that requires us to become more skilled at something that's natural. And as we develop that skill, often what happens is we think in terms of what are the bad things that happen in sleep, and then how do I avoid them, or some set of protocols or deliberate answering end states, right? If I take X supplement, if I do X meditation, then sleep will be like Y. And that's a very unstable skill, because as soon as the context changes, that answer is no longer relevant. And so if you really don't understand what are the stable, or sometimes they're called invariant levers, that you're pulling on to get this outcome, then it leaves you to be very fragile when contexts shift, especially if the demands of the environment shift rapidly. And so if we're thinking about, okay, if I know that sleep is one of the most important anchor points across everything that has to do with my health and performance, then what are the known things that never change for sleep? And those things are things like light. That's a known, powerful, probably the most powerful influencer of my sleep experience. Temperature, noise, my behavioral patterns, like what food I eat and when I eat it, and what my routine is, right? And you can separate those into environmental and behavioral factors. And so if we think about sleep as a skill, and we know that we have these 5 levers that I just mentioned, and that we can pull on those levers in different ways, that gives us things that we can specifically focus on and then measure the outcomes of over time, rather than thinking if we have some sleep protocol that is going to deliver the stable answer forever. and it's not. Now, that doesn't mean don't try a protocol, but just know that if a protocol that you try works, it's working under the specific context that you're using it in, and that you have to understand how that context is interacting with the protocol you're using if you want to be able to continuously pursue good sleep for health and performance over the course of your lifetime, rather than I think that this one answer is going to work for me forever and then get surprised when it doesn't. So that's this idea of skill acquisition or skill adaptability is I can become more attuned to what are the things that are always the same for this aspect of my health, and then find different ways to pull on those levers and measure the outcomes. And that starts to develop a much more robust approach to how we sustain health over time. And it's really not complicated in practice. And in fact, it mostly looks like tinkering around with stuff and seeing what happens, and making sure that we have a way that we can measure it, right? Do you measure your sleep? That isn't just duration, but do you have an internal dialogue about how did I feel when I woke up that day? How was my performance when I worked out after I woke up? Did I feel groggy? Was I more stiff? If I do 10 toe touches while my coffee's brewing, how did they feel compared to yesterday? So do we have some metric, whether it's an internal metric, or for some of you, you might be wearing a wearable device like an Oura Ring or an Apple Watch or whatever. Regardless of the specific validity of that tool, are you using something as a metric by which you can measure the experiment that you're doing? So you have an outcome you're looking for. I want to improve some aspect of my sleep and rest. I have a way that I'm going to measure it. And then I'm going to try something specific to change the outcome. And you try that for a little while, and then you go, yes, no, maybe. Here are the other contextual elements. My dog was sick all night. I trained really hard. I was stressed out about some stuff from work. And you put all that into a bundle and you realize, here's the outcome I got. What if I change one thing? And then you do it again. And that is a process you do continually forever as a way to interact with and engage with the environment of your own health. Now, I guess the bigger question is, do you have to do that? And the answer is no, you don't. Nobody has to do it. What you can do instead is have no purposeful contact with the environment of your health, ignore the development of the skill of performance longevity, and wait until your given genetic robustness wears out and you have a malfunction. So you can just wait until the system breaks and then go, what happened? Just like you can wait until you're broke to make more money. It doesn't mean it's a good idea, but you can do it. And so what I'm saying is have some system of a continuous sort of micro audit of, hey, what is going on in here? And to use that to continuously develop additional and more robust skills that help you stay healthy so you can do well at whatever it is you care about.